celebrating the adventure and continuing the journey.
Thank you.
Fellow Toastmasters, the Boy Scouts of America, an organization that is dear to my heart, our country, our communities, and our youth. Parents, volunteers, scouts all know that scouting is a way of life. And because of that way of life, our organization has a rich history. We have a vision and a mission that will carry us into the future. Throughout 2010, we will be celebrating that life. We are celebrating 100 years of building the character and integrity of the America's youth. We are celebrating the adventure, continuing the journey. Along our path, we can be proud of the contribution Scouting has made to our great country. Hitting this 100-year mark is a great achievement for many reasons. But the one that is most telling is probably the most obvious. We're doing something right. The principles we were founded on 100 years ago are the same principles we live by today. Leadership, character, service, environmental stewardship, and achievement. A century of living these principles is surely a century worth celebrating. We're successful because we abide by the Scout Law, which guides us to living a life of honor. Our law teaches us to be trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. The Boy Scouts of America has made many accomplishments in the past 100 years, so I'd like to give you a small glimpse into why I'm excited about the future. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the great things we've done for the young people of our country, for those who are less fortunate than we are, and for our most precious resource, our environment. So let me take you back to the beginning. The year was 1910. The Boy Scouts of America was incorporated under the laws of the District of Columbia. And by 1912, there were scouts enrolled in every state in the country. A few years later, the Boy Scouts across the country ministered to people who were afflicted by the great flu epidemic in 1918. In the 1930s, in the wake of the Great Depression, Scouts responded to President Roosevelt's call to action. They collected nearly 2 million pieces of clothing, furniture, food, and supplies for the needy. Then in the 40s, after the declaration of war, the Scouts again were called on by the government to distribute defense bonds, to collect aluminum and waste paper, and perhaps most important, to work with the Red Cross and their emergency vehicles. In the decade following World War II in the 1950s, Scouts collected over 2 million pounds of clothing for overseas relief. Further, Scouts did a national conservation good turn by planting more than 6 million trees in parks, rural areas, wilderness areas. I guess you could say the Scouts were green before most Americans even knew what green meant. Then in the 1960s, we launched a program called the Inner City Rural Program, which has now become Scout Reach. It's helping the youth at risk and bringing them scouting at no cost. Then in the 1980s, we said goodbye to Lieutenant Colonel Ellison Onizuka and Dr. Ronald McNair, two former Scouts who were crew members of the doomed Challenger space shuttle. They were more than leaders. They were pioneers. In fact, the space program has had more than half of all American astronauts were Scouts. And every man who walked on the moon was an Eagle Scout. Over the years, such notable people as John F. Kennedy, Michael Jordan, Walter Cronkite, Gerald Ford, and Bill Gates, just to mention a few, were Scouts. They too took the Scout oath to do their duty to God and their country and to obey the Scout Law. And more recently, in 2004, the Boy Scouts of America created what we call a Good Turn for America. It's a national call for all Boy Scouts to tackle hunger, homelessness, and other problems that afflict our nation. Scouts have logged over more than 6 million hours of community service as a part of this program, and that continues today. And even in our city of Rochester, our Scouts participate in the Rochester Little Bit Better program every April. Now, I hope I've showed you how throughout history Boy Scouts have done their best, how they've obeyed the Scout law, and how to be young men of character and of drive, leaders who serve others, and environmental stewards. Our nation needs, and will always need, thoughtful, resourceful leaders to guide our communities and help young people and families who are grappling with hunger, poverty, and poor health. America needs Scouts, and I'm proud of the journey we've taken in this last century. But like any bold journey, ours has not been without challenges. We faced opposition from groups whose beliefs are different than ours. But no matter what stumbling blocks we encounter, our commitment to our communities does not waver. As we begin our next phase, we look forward to reintroducing America to all the Boy Scouts of America has to offer. Like the Scouts who have gone before them, today's Scouts will become presidents, astronauts, athletes, business leaders. Many will serve their country in the armed forces. Others will serve their communities as good Samaritans and their families as husbands and fathers. Today, young men have many priorities that keep them from joining Scouting. But there's an important place in a very well-rounded boy's life for Scouting. Whether it's in academics, athletics, or arts, every activity a boy pursues is enriched by Scouting. So as we develop our future programs, we will always keep in mind to keep it relevant to today's youth and to their changing interests. But no matter how times change, the values of the Boy Scouts of America remain the same. Our mission may be lofty, but it is attainable. The Scout Oath says, "On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country and to obey the Scout law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight." The words of the oath are simple, but they are truly words to live by. Whenever you recite the oath, you pledge to learn valuable skills and achieve meaningful goals. We give our word of honor that in the next 100 years, we will make the world a better place. We are the Boy Scouts of America, celebrating the adventure, continuing the journey.